had a window, we have a load of old windows that we do things out of, but this one here got smashed. So I've asked Martin,
lucky me,
to take all the glass out for me, because I'd like to make it into like a really fab statement-y piece, sort of picture, sign, something like that, picture or sign. But what I'd like him to do is put palette board on the back, and then I'm going to get him to cut me a great big word out in the CNC to put onto it, but I'm going to stain and vintage the palette wood behind it, and I'm going to probably shabby the window. But before I can do any of these things, he needs to get all this glass removed, and he's taken all the safety precautions. He's been quite smart, wearing gloves, and before he does anything that does look dangerous, I'm going to stop filming and we'll come back to it when the glass is out.
Okay, so what I haven't shown you is the giant mess I just created, basically in getting all the glass out of this. Most of the pieces of glass came out quite easily, but what I've also done is all around the edge where the glass normally sits and is surrounded by lots of putty holding it all in, I've stripped all that out, given myself a ledge along here, the same on the other side, the same up here, where what I can do now is I can put palette boards into this space. And they're, funnily enough, about exactly the same depth as that. So I'll be using these boards, and what I'll do is I'll cut these down to size and slot them in there so that
that's what
here's
I'm
our CNC that's been programmed to cut out our word wonderlust.
So I'm going to take a little break just now because it's tea time. I'm going to go indoors, have some yummies, and then after tea I'll come back out and do this.
Fabulous. Hi, today I'm working from the kitchen. It's actually freezing outside. It's April in Scotland and it's just too cold to work outside, and it's quite a big piece. So what I've done is, it's too big for the studio, it's too cold in the workshop, and so I've been all different places, so I've decided just to paint it in my kitchen. So you're just going to have to ignore all the bits and pieces round about as I film this. So this is going to be a statement piece of art, wall art today, which I'll show you all the steps and put the video together so that you understand what happened. So it started with an old sash window, and that had got smashed, it blown over in the wind. So we had the frame, some salvaged reclaimed timber, and a great big thick cut out from made by Marley that says Wonderlust. We're going to put that on it. Now today's tutorial isn't exactly hugely complicated. There are a few steps to make it, but if you buy a word from us, or you have a word, or even if you did this with a stencil, it wouldn't matter how you did it. You just have to go through these different steps, and one of the biggest steps I think at the beginning was trying to pull out all the glass and putty from the old window. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to actually look at the back boards and age those up first and varnish those up first, and then I'm going to decide whether I'm going to keep the frame chippy or whether I'm going to paint it with white chalk paint. But you can follow along as I make these decisions as I go. So here we go. So here's the frame, and as you can see, all the dings, the chips, the old holes, everything's been left in the reclaimed wood. And the frame, as I said, I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do. I like a bit chippy. I was thinking of just peeling off the bits that were hanging off and sealing it, or maybe painting it one solid colour of chalk paint. But the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to age the centre, I'm going to age the wood of the back piece with some stain, and then we will work out what we're going to do next. I'm also going to paint the wood, the Wonderlust wooden cutout as well. I'm going to do that in white so that it shows up. So what have I got here to stain it with? I've got some brown acrylic, and in this jar I have some black, sort of dark brown, it's more dark brown, kind of bordering black chalk paint that I made up. and what I'm wanting to do is I'm wanting to kind of mix them with water to get a sort of stain that the colour I'm looking for. So I'm just kind of measuring it out. In fact, I'll put it in this jam jar so that you've got an idea of the quantity of what I'm talking about. So you don't need much. So I'm thinking that's pretty good for that. And yeah, that's how much water I would put in as you're sort of starting sort of. Now this is going to be blacker as opposed to browner, so I need to make that more brown now. So I'm just going to put in some brown acrylic paint, and quite often how I can work it out if it's the right colours, I run my brush up the side of the jar and it kind of gives me a colour, and I look at it and I go, is this what I'm looking for? Now I don't want this to be too dark straight away, I don't mind adding dark as we go, but for my first coat I want it to be quite light, so I'm going to add a little bit more water to this. So this is how watery it is, and you just really need to experiment and play around with your paints so that you can, you know, it doesn't have to be a fancy glaze, it doesn't have to be a fancy varnish, because acrylic basically taints any wood, as long as there's not like, it won't do it if there's gloss paint or anything on it, but you know, if it's bare boards it'll colour it, and it's good, it'll stay on. So I think this is going to be about right. It's quite pale, so we'll see how we go now. To use it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop it in here, because I'm going to use a big brush to apply it. I'm sorry, you can hear my children in the background having fun. It's their Easter holidays, so now I'm looking at that and I'm already going, that is too dark, so I'm adding more water. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cover the whole thing first of all in this stain, and then we'll get back to, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my brush and I'm going to put a little bit of water on my brush just to kind of water this down a wee bit. So some bits are a wee bit darker and some bits are a wee bit lighter. I'm taking it right up to the edges of the frame. It would help if I had something that wasn't. So I'm watering down that colour, so I've got kind of darker bits and lighter bits. I'm going in with the dark stain again, up in the edges. Now I don't mind if it's darker in at my edges, I haven't got a problem with that. It's great that I'm working indoors today. I had no notion of being outside and being cold. We had some really nice weather recently, and then yesterday, I mean it's April, and yesterday it was snowing. So, I mean, that's climate change for you. And you can't see all of this, but you can see quite a bit of it. Now, I'm quite enjoying that. A bit more darker on these boards. Things to remember, try and make everything go the same direction. Don't be going rogue and deciding to do all over just now. I'm quite happy with that. Now that's a nice sort of base, but I always think you can never really tell until it's dry, so I'm going to let it dry before I add any other tones or colours to that bit. Just making sure that all my strokes are going the same way. Now we need to make up our mind about the frame, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a wee chisel and some sandpaper, and I'm going to see what happens if I could chip it up a little bit. If I could chip it up a wee bit more, I may work with that, but if not, I might just give it one solid paint of chalk paint. So I'm going off to find a chisel and I'll be back in 1 minute. So this is the colour of the wood so far, which I'm quite liking. I'm going to probably put a little bit of darker around the edges, and I have made the decision with the frame. I've decided there is chippy and chippy, and although I would just keep it like this because I like it, I think that if we've got customers that want to buy it, I think maybe they would like it a little bit, probably less chippy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint it with Rust-Oleum chalky finish paint in antique white, and you can watch me doing a little bit of this now. So I'm just going to go ahead and paint this frame, and I think I'll paint my wonderlust words as well off camera, and then by then we should be ready to kind of start putting things together. I can't do the inside of the white right now because the brown is still quite damp and the masking tape will not stick to it, so I'm just kind of doing the bits I can do right now. So I'll go on and do this and we will reconvene shortly. So what I've done is I've given the whole frame 2 coats of white chalk paint. Now, I was never trying to make this smooth. I would have sanded the window if I'd wanted that to happen. But I wanted still, if I sanded it, it would just look like a new window painted white. And it isn't. It's an old window with here's a different build up of paint on it. And I want to see that texture. I don't want to get rid of it. So it's been painted just really to clean it up. Now I'm going to sand down the edges when it's dry, and then I'm going to darken up the middle. But I have to wait till both components are dry. So while I'm doing that, I'm going to take the wonderlust out to the shed and lightly sand across the top of it, and then get a coarser grit sandpaper and take off some of the edges just to shabby it, and then I'm going to seal it. But you can come with me and see me doing these steps. So I'm out in the shed, and what I've done is I've just scuffed up and sanded back all the edges, not all of them, but you know, maybe homed in some other areas. But I've just kind of given it a sort of a light sand and then a more in-depth sand on some of the edges, just to make sure that it looks not too sparkly new. So that's our word wonderlust done. So I will take it, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give it a coat of spray sealer. So what I've done is I have painted it, and then what I've done is I've actually re-chippied it in a more sort of controlled sort of, even though it's an old window and we know it's old, all the texture is still there. I mean, there's layers of paint on there. But what I've done is I've just sanded the edges to give it a bit more of a controlled chippy, just so that it doesn't just look like somebody stuck up a window on their wall. So that's where we're at so far. Now I'm going to work on darkening up the middle wood now that the frame and everything is dry. So I'm going to put the camera on the tripod, and we'll see if we can catch me doing this. So what I've got here is the original brown wash that I put on the brown to begin with. Now I'm going to use that because this is this colour really, just slightly watered down a little bit. So I know that it's not going to be darker. I know that it's going to be darker than this colour already, but I still have my dark coloured chalk paint. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to pull from the bottom where the chalk paint has settled, and I'm going to start with that, and I'm going to put it up and then dip my brush in the water, and I'm kind of focusing on the edges. I want the edges, round the edges, to be darker than the middle. So I'm kind of going to start like bringing my brush in now and avoiding that centre bit, and I'm going back down into the bottom of that thicker. Now once I've got it quite wet, I can put a little bit of darker into it, but now this is where you have to be careful because you don't want it to look like you've put it on stripes. So I've got an old painty rag here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of soften those edges out. Now I can really see I want it a little bit darker, so what I'm going to do is, the thing is you have to be careful because you don't want to end up too dark. Kind of going round in a circle so that the dark stuff kind of gets left into the corners and the light stuff gets wiped away, if you know what I mean. So I need a bit more water on the brush. You can bring it up a little bit higher, just as long as it doesn't reach where you think the words are going to go. I mean, this is just the way I do it. I just want to kind of frame off those words that I've been, you know, painting. I'm really quite happy with this corner here. And I know you haven't really got the best camera angle, so I'm going to stop a minute and I'm going to pull the camera off just so that you can have a good look at what it is I'm actually trying to do here. So you're not wiping into the corners, you're making sure your cloth doesn't go into the corners because you want that dark or dirty line. You have to think about how dirt would settle over the years, and we're trying to make something look old. We're trying to give it an appearance of old, so, you know, don't wipe right in at your edges. And then dark, and then plenty of water on top of that, just so that you've got movement to wipe it. And then in a circular motion that you'd wipe anything, just wipe the dark bits out. Now I already can see I'm quite enjoying this, so I'm just going to put a bit more water up around here. I want a little bit more dark, so I'm just going to dip it in here. Getting brave now, I'm doing it in larger chunks. That's always a disaster when I get blue. Starting to look like how I would like it, and then it's just a matter of building up layers. It's kind of like bad cleaning, you know, when you're cleaning you want to clean it all the way, but with this you're wanting to clean not in the edges. Want a watery brush for this bit here, just to bring this bit in just slightly. And that kind of leaves a highlight in the middle of the frame. I'm just going to put a little bit dark all in these edges here. I'll just touch the frame there. I have to be really careful of that. you have to make sure that you get right into those corners. That's what the giveaway is, that you've done this, made it look aged, if the corners are not dirty. Get a thinner bit of your cloth because you're trying not to touch up around your white, and just rub those out. Keep painting in that hole because there's a screw that, when the screws had to go in sideways to make sure that this was secure enough, Martin had to screw it in sideways, so there is a screw that can be seen, but it will be covered with this. Now I'm just going to put a little bit more dark here, and then I'll show you where I'm at. This corner down here is darker than these corners, so I'm just gonna right now, I'm going to take the camera off the tripod and show you. So hopefully you can see what I've done there. So I put it thick in the edges and I started wiping it so it's lighter here and darker in all the edges. Just wiping it till I got to here, and then leaving a sort of centre highlight here in the middle for where the words are going to overshoot on both ends, but just to kind of give it a highlight. And I've done the same. So there's my dark line, and this is where I've wiped it up to, using my dark chalk paint, my watered down brown acrylic and water, just to kind of, that corner there, actually it's not good light, isn't as dark as it looks. I'll run you across to this corner here. Again, the light's not great, but so you can see where this is going. So what we could do is, I don't know if I can hold the camera and do this at the same time. I'll try not to shake and wobble. Wonderlust has been sanded, and so it's going to look a bit like that. It's come out really nice. Now I'm still in two minds whether I'm now going to varnish the back. I've sealed the Wonderlust. I'll have to seal the window, so I'm wondering whether I varnish the back of the wood here. That would make it shiny, and I don't particularly want it too shiny, or I just spray it all with sealer. Oh, what to do. I'll be back in a minute when I've decided my next move. Okay, so I decided in my infinite wisdom I would give it a coat of stain. So I'm just waiting for it to dry out a little bit, and then we'll get the words glued on. So this is dry, and what I've done is I've put glue on just about every bit of the back of all of my piece, just so that it's got really good adhesion. And now I'm just about to stick it down. So when it's something as big as this, you just have to kind of make sure that you've got a little bit of wiggle room, but I think fortune favours the bold. I'm thinking here. And then not every board is even or equal, but if you can get it to touch most of them. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to find some weights, which I've got around here, and some of the bits, because this last piece here There's more ways, so I'm just going to put some weight on there and some weight on here and my other weight around here. I'm just going to put my last weight in the centre like that, and when it's dry, I'll be back just to show you the kind of final and maybe a staged out shot.
Been made by Marley. If you've enjoyed what you've watched today, please feel free to share, and we'd really love it if you subscribed. Thank you.